Hello all and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and another Take 5 for Florida History. As you can see by the title, today I'm taking a look at one of Florida's most famous animals, the remarkable Lou the hippopotamus, who is called Homosassa Springs State Park home for many years. Followers of the channel know that I have a great love for animals. Every year I spend hundreds of hours out in Florida's wilderness, and I annually visit multiple zoos and aquariums as well. So today I'll take a look at the life of Lou, Florida's favorite hippopotamus, and his historic home and famous attraction, Homosassa Springs. Enjoy. For those people who aren't familiar with Homosassa Springs, it might come as a surprise that a Florida state park would not only be the home for a hippo, but is a zoo. While the story of the state park begins in 1988, its history as an attraction goes back over 100 years, but of course that's only acknowledging European connections. Indigenous people had lived in the area for probably at least 10,000 years prior to the peninsula being discovered by explorers from the Spanish Empire. Homosassa Springs is only 10 miles south of Crystal River Archaeological State Park, one of the most important indigenous settlement sites in Florida, a place that had been a vital ceremonial center for at least 1,600 years and which contains the graves of as many as 1,500 individuals. When European American settlers moved into the area in the late 19th century, they discovered that the Homosassa River was fed by a group of first magnitude springs. The magnitude classification for springs is based on the rate of flow of the water discharged from the aquifer. First magnitude is the largest, with at least 748 gallons or 2,800 liters of water discharged per second. Homosassa is just one of 33 first magnitude springs in the state with a daily flow of 56 million gallons or 200 million liters. This means the outflow could fill 22 Olympic-sized pools a day. At the beginning of the 20th century, a rail line ran directly past the springs. The train that served the line would stop at the springs to collect cargo, including supplies delivered by boats such as cedar wood, sugar, and cotton, along with fresh fish from the river and the spring water itself. The train would also drop off and pick up locals who would enjoy the springs. Like all other springs in settled areas of the state, Homosassa began simply as a local swimming and fishing location, but it wasn't long before the area was developed to provide changing rooms and basic concessions. The first fish observatory, a submerged iron tank with a few windows, was believed to have been built in the 1940s, though Homosassa's official start as an attraction began in 1964 when 150 acres were purchased around the springs and developed by the Norris Development Company. That's when it was first promoted to vacationers traveling U.S. routes 19 and 98 towards Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Sarasota. Originally, the attraction was called Nature's Giant Fish Bowl, but would later become simply Homosassa Springs. In the 1960s, the park would add both native and exotic animals and become a small zoo as well as a place to explore Florida nature. This is when Ivan Tors and his film production company entered the picture. Tors was born in Hungary and served in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. Afterwards, he moved to California. At first, he became a screenwriter, but moved into directing and producing movies and TV shows. In the late 50s, his company began to do underwater filming, most famously creating the action scenes in the popular show Sea Hunt, a syndicated TV series that Tors also produced. The show was filmed in California, Florida, and the Bahamas, with Silver Springs, Cypress Gardens, and Tarpon Springs being regular filming locations. Tors' company also filmed the spectacular underwater scenes for the James Bond film Thunderball. In the 1960s, Tors moved into creating animal-centered productions, including the movies Flipper, Clarence the Cross-Eyed Lion, Gentle Giant, Zebra in the Kitchen, Africa Texas Style, and Namu the Killer Whale. As you can see here, Tors turned several of them into TV series as well: Flipper, Daktari, Gentle Ben, and Cowboy in Africa. Not surprisingly, Flipper was filmed in Florida, with the movie being shot in the Florida Keys and the TV show in Miami. You can watch my dolphin video for more information on Flipper. Tours would move a number of his talented animals to Homosassa Springs in the 1960s, and they would perform for the visitors. One such performer was a young hippo by the name of Lucifer. Lucifer was born in 1960 at the San Diego Zoo. At birth, he weighed 90 pounds or 41 kilograms, and his mother was named Lotus and his father Rube. While the young hippo appeared in movies as well as TV shows and commercials over the years, he never had a starring role. However, that was probably for the best. At that time, any animal who interacted with humans and was potentially dangerous would have their teeth and claws removed. Lucifer would move to Homosassa from California in 1966. He'd eventually become better known as Lou. I like to think that he has a sweeter disposition and fits better with the nickname. Along with many gators, the fish that can still be seen from the underwater observatory, and performing animals such as black bears and river otters, Lou became a fixture of the small zoo. He is of the species Hippopotamus amphibius, which is a mixture of Greek and Latin, which means amphibious water horse. There are two hippo species. Lou is a common hippopotamus. The other is the endangered pygmy hippo species, which is a quarter of the size of its larger relative. The common hippo is the third largest land animal in the world behind elephants and most rhino species. While hippos are relatively short, it's one of the most massive animals around. Their bodies are barrel-shaped with stout legs and a massive head. Hippos are considered a semi-aquatic species. During the day, they spend their time mostly submerged in water. At night, they leave the water and wander through the forest looking for grass to graze upon. While some people think they eat water plants, they don't in any significant quantity. Instead, they can eat 80 pounds or 36 kilograms of grass each night. They mostly sleep during the day and appear to be able to do so totally submerged. Studies have shown that they are capable of remaining asleep even though they need to surface to breathe every 5 minutes or so. While hippos are very mobile on land, in a sprint they can reach 30 miles or 48 kilometers an hour, they are a joy to watch underwater. While Homosassa doesn't have an underwater viewing area, nearby Busch Gardens does have a hippo enclosure with a large underwater area. As you can see here, hippos don't really swim. They mostly propel themselves along the bottom with their feet. Busch Gardens currently has 3 common hippos named Devi, Kita, and Moyo, who are the stars of the Hippo Insider Tour, one of the many great tours that Busch Gardens offers. By the way, you can also see pygmy hippos nearby at Zoo Tampa. They have 3 named Jaja, Pogo, and Holly Berry, a family unit of mom, dad, and calf. Speaking of feet, hippos are part of the even-toed ungulate order of mammals. This brings up a common misconception. While there are both even-toed and odd-toed ungulates, the odd or even doesn't refer to the total number of toes each species has. It refers to the number of toes that the animal actually uses to walk on. All of the ungulates, more commonly referred to as hoofstock, have 5 toes, just like humans, though some of the toes may be vestigial. Hippos walk on 4 toes, while other related animals, such as pigs, only use 2. Though hippos are even-toed, their closest relatives aren't pigs, camels, or cattle. They're the fully aquatic infraorder, Cetacea. Yes, this means that whales and dolphins are arguably hoofstock. It also means that they're the only hoofstock that are carnivores. Whippomorpha is the suborder of even-toed ungulates that contains only hippos, whales, and dolphins. It split off from the other suborders some 59 million years ago, while whales diverged from hippos approximately 55 million years ago. Today, the suborder is either semi-aquatic or fully aquatic, but it's unknown whether the last common ancestor of the whales and hippos lived on land or in the water, or a mixture of both. This means we can't be certain if the aquatic traits of the Whippomorpha is linked or is the product of convergent evolution. But let's get back to Lou. He spent the 60s and 70s appearing in film or TV productions and hanging out at Homosassa. It's believed he appeared in the Ivan Tors TV productions Cowboy in Africa and Daktari, among other shows. He also befriended a fellow actor who happened to be a donkey named Susie. People say that the two were fairly inseparable, but I'd guess that would have to have been mostly on land. Lou seemed to be happy to follow Susie around, and the staff learned they could move Lou by simply getting Susie to go where they wanted. In the 1980s, he was enjoying retirement and staying active, playing with the various forms of enrichment that his trainers provided him, such as car tires. By now, he was becoming a middle-aged hippo, as wild hippos typically live into their 30s and sometimes their 40s. But at a time when Lou should be enjoying himself, a great deal of uncertainty would enter his life. The Norris Corporation, which had owned the property since 1964, chose to sell it in 1978. The attraction passed through several different owners until Citrus County stepped in and purchased it in 1988. Their goal was to protect the environmentally sensitive 150 acres surrounding the springs. Soon after, the state purchased the land and developed it as a state park. The uncertainty was that while the park system was willing to keep operating the zoo as part of the attraction, they only wanted to keep native animals. This would be an issue for the nearly 30-year-old California native. Never mind that his ancestors came from Central Africa. The state decided that Lou, along with other non-Floridians, would have to leave, but they didn't count on Lou's popularity. If you'll excuse the pun, he was clearly the biggest star at the attraction, and his unofficial fan club stepped in and began a petition to let him stay in Homosassa. Since the issue was that Lou wasn't a true Floridian, the local newspaper, the Citrus County Chronicle, began a campaign to make Lou a citizen of the state. Locals began sending thousands of letters to newly elected Governor Lawton Childs, many written by children, which seemed appropriate considering he was moved across the country when he was only 6. Reportedly, the governor received over 1,000 letters. This led Childs to grant Lou a special exemption in 1991, declaring him an honorary Florida citizen. As far as anyone knows, Lou is the only animal in Florida to ever be made a state citizen. This provided the exemption Lou needed to be left in perpetuity at Homosassa Springs State Park. For many years, Lou has held center stage at the park. His enclosure is the first you see when you enter the zoo parts of the attraction, and there's 3 sides to easily accommodate his many fans. He has a good-sized pool, gets plenty to eat, and regular health care, which being the oldest hippo in captivity is pretty necessary. He is arthritic and not terribly spry, even for a 6,000-pound or 2,700-kilogram fellow. He receives daily medication placed inside the fruit, which makes up a part of his regular diet. As this video is released, he's 62 years old and is reportedly only 3 years away from being considered the oldest known hippo ever. His birthday on January 28 is one of the most popular days at the park, with a celebration planned each year with a special cake and festivities. Lou seems to enjoy the day and is often responsive towards his fans. Like all male hippos, he's rather territorial, and there's one part of his enclosure at which visitors shouldn't linger if he's nearby. The area is marked with this yellow sign, and while its warning often elicits laughter, the sign is there for a very real purpose. Like many animals, Lou has a tendency to mark his territory by urinating and defecating. When doing this, Lou quickly flicks his small tail, which flings his waste all over. More than one visitor has been marked by Lou. Because Lou was protected by gubernatorial decree, he has been the only exotic animal in the park for many years. While it's a small zoo, it has many native species, some of which are very important to the state's ecology and others that are quite rare. Since the property is kept as natural as possible, sometimes it's difficult to tell whether an animal is part of the zoo or is just visiting. There are many birds that come and go, and in the wintertime, Homosassa is one of the best places in the state to see wild manatees. I talk about them in this video. Many of the park's residents are there because they were injured, and after they healed, they weren't able to be released. To me, one of the most remarkable exhibits is the pair of whooping cranes. They are two of about 800 birds, both in the wild and in captivity, so they're incredibly rare. They're also a lot of fun to watch. There are several raptors, like the bald eagle, osprey, and owls. There are playful otters and, of course, plenty of gators. If you're walking along the river towards the underwater observatory, you might also catch a glimpse of a silvery fish leaping out of the water. That would be a mullet, possibly escaping a larger fish, or as some experts think, getting a burst of oxygen. While the underwater observatory has seen better days, it's worth a visit because of its long history. Sometimes you can see many fish, and other times there's not one to be seen. With luck and excellent care, Lou might make it to 65 and break the record. His many fans certainly hope so. He has an unofficial fan page on Facebook with 3,500 followers. The locals certainly know him and enjoy visiting him along with all the other animal residents. There's no question he's a wonderful ambassador for his species as well as Homosassa Springs, though in truth I think it's a shame that the state park system doesn't embrace him as their ambassador. Regardless, I encourage you to visit Florida's favorite hippo and Homosassa Springs State Park. It's still off the beaten path, but it's a beautiful part of Florida, and it's close to a state park that takes care of a highly important indigenous area. Both are well worth the visit. Be sure to say hi to Lou when you visit. Sometimes he even likes to respond back. Thank you for watching another of my videos. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to learn more about Florida's tourism history. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.